Uh, we are having a very interesting session with a rapid fire chat session with Mr. Obhijit Banerjee, Managing Director of Linde India Limited, on manufacturing O2 crisis and solution at present. The session will be moderated by Mr. Indrajit Chen, Managing Director, International Combustion India Limited, and past President, the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We will we have noticed that Delhi exaggerated oxygen requirement by 4 times, quoted by Supreme Court panel that 4 Delhi hospitals have been called out for claiming high consumption of oxygen with fewer beds. Uh, I think this may set the tone of the discussion. I will hand it over to Mr. Sen, if you may take it forward from there. Thank you, Mr. Sen.
Thank you, Arnab. It's truly a pleasure to have Mr. Obhijit Banerjee, Managing Director of Linde India Limited, with us today for this important and topical session. It seems that even today it's in the news, as it has just been told. This topical session is manufacture of oxygen, the crisis and solution at present. Mr. Banerjee, I first like to congratulate you and your team and Linde India for the highly commendable work done to meet the unprecedented crisis of oxygen shortage faced by the country during the second wave of COVID-19 pandemic. No praise can be enough for the rapid response from you and some of the others for mitigating this crisis. The crisis of this magnitude was beyond anyone's imagination, and despite tremendous effort put in by you and other manufacturers of oxygen, some tragedy which left deep scar in the life of many could not be avoided. Mr. Banerjee, people continue to be scared as medical fraternity tells us to expect third and more such waves in future. We shall appreciate if you kindly tell us briefly what were the main challenges during the second wave and of COVID-19, and also how these are met, and how prepared are you to face the new waves if it comes. Mr. Banerjee.
Thanks, Mr. Sen, thanks a lot. Just at the outset, with regard to what you were mentioning, what our company did, yeah, definitely it was an incredible teamwork done by every department in our company. But obviously, we would not have been successful without an incredible amount of cooperation that we got across the board, whether it be the central governments, the state governments, our partner companies, Indian Air Force, Indian Railways. I mean, you name it, everyone pitched in. Yeah. So a special thanks to everyone who supported us. Now, coming back to what we saw, so if I may just give some numbers, Mr. Sen, supplying medical oxygen has been one of our core businesses. It's not a huge quantum of, revenue-wise, it's not a huge thing, but for us, it's something very, very important, very close to our hearts. Across India, the statistics show that prior to the pandemic, the overall medical oxygen demand in India was around 850 tons per day. We saw wave 1 hitting us last year. It peaked sometime towards the end of September, beginning of October, and there were about 1 million active cases, and the medical oxygen demand went up to around 1,000 tons per day. To about 3,000 tons per day. So about 3.5 times what it used to be normally. Then, of course, wave 2 came and hit us in April, and the numbers shot up in May with more than 37 lakh odd active cases. The medical oxygen demand pan-India was reckoned to be a bit less than 10,000 tons per day. So which is 11 times what it is. So, well, the entire, let's say, the industry, the entire infrastructure had been geared for so far. Definitely, there were some easy things to do. For example, of course, at the cost of a lot of pain to our industrial oxygen customers, we had to start throttling the industrial oxygen sales, shift over those liquid oxygen molecules to medical oxygen. The government of India put in measures. Earlier in wave one, we had seen some of the state governments putting in measures rationing liquid oxygen for industrial users. This was taken up by the central government during wave two. And at one point of time, there was a complete ban of using of any liquid oxygen apart from medical use, except for some very few exempt sectors. That's the first thing that was done. Next is we were looking into plant capacities. We always believed, we are a part of Linde PLC, and Linde PLC has two entities in India, Linde India and Praxair India. So between the two entities, we always believed we had a capacity of around 2,000 tons per day of liquid oxygen manufacturing. We started tweaking that. Our operations team did an incredible, great job. And we actually landed up producing almost 2,950 odd tons per day on a good day. We was a sustainable level was around 2,900 or so we were able to do. So almost a 50% increase in what we believed our design capacities to be. This was of course done at the expense of reducing liquid nitrogen production, reducing liquid argon, maximizing the throughputs of the plants, and of course also supported by a lot of our gaseous oxygen customers, mainly the steel industry, who throttled their own production and their consumption of gaseous oxygen so that we had more oxygen molecules for liquefaction to serve the nation. Having taken care of the production part, then was of course the distribution. There was, as you know, wave one when it hit was primarily Maharashtra, Gujarat. Then it went over to the NCR region, north, and we realized that we had a lot of liquid oxygen capacities in the eastern part of India. You know, the eastern part of India is where most of the steel industries were. The steel industry was on the first to accept the BOO model of oxygen plants. So we have a substantial production capacity in eastern part of India. The challenge was, how do we get that liquid oxygen from eastern part of India to the north and the west? One was, of course, the normal solution, road tankers. We converted liquid nitrogen, liquid argon tankers to liquid oxygen. But there was definitely, the capacity was not sufficient. So this was something that we pioneering that we did the first time in India. We actually put ISO containers into service for cryogenic use. We got some excellent support from partner companies like Tata Steel, ITC, Adani, to name a few. We put together a scheme where these companies sponsored the rental of ISO containers from across the world. We had a sourcing funnel from our global sister companies in the Linde Group. We arranged them on rental basis, air freighted them into India. That's where Indian Air Force helped a lot. We also had military grade chartered aircrafts like AN-124s, etc. Get them into India, make them fit for liquid oxygen use, put them on rakes supplied by Concor, and the Indian Railways started running those, what we call oxygen expresses, from eastern part of India to the north, and then subsequently to the south. We got in more than about 60 odd containers of 20 tons each, but due to the much faster turnaround time, they actually, there was a multiplying factor of almost 4. So the 60 odd containers were equivalent to putting in about 240 additional tankers on wheels on the roads of India. So with that, we were very happy. I mean, we were definitely satisfied to note that every time the central government used to make an allocation, the DPIIT was coming out with allocations of which company, which plant is to supply how many tons to which state. And almost on every day, we were on top of it. We were exceeding those numbers.
In fact, Mr. Banerjee, this must have been a massive logistic issue and a massive scale-up issue of unprecedented nature. And this has actually been a great savior. But talking about, you had mentioned that you have used oxygen came from steel plants and other industrial issues, but then there's always a little confusion about what is the difference between industrial grade oxygen and medical grade oxygen. What are the differences? Because there's a lot of confusion in normal people about this particular aspect. What is the difference?
Yeah, so it's like this. We produce oxygen through a cryogenic process where we are doing a fractional distillation of air at temperatures of minus 180, minus 190 degrees centigrade, and we get liquid oxygen of a particular purity. that purity which we get is actually purer than what is needed for medical use. The Indian Pharmacopoeia specifies a particular purity as well as a particular impurity maximum levels for medical use of oxygen. By the way, medical oxygen is a drug as per Indian laws. It comes under the Indian Pharmacopoeia. Now, every molecule of liquid oxygen that we sell meets actually surpasses the quality requirements of the Indian Pharmacopoeia. It's just that to sell it as liquid medical oxygen, the plant has to be certified. There are certain processes to be maintained, certain analysis to be done on every batch that's going on, which is laid down by the Indian Pharmacopoeia. So that is a default position from our side. As I said, every molecule of liquid oxygen that we sell, it surpasses the medical oxygen requirements.
In fact, this is totally unknown. Most people are this is unknown because that the oxygen that is normally produced by companies like Linde is actually as of a superior level of purity than normal medical oxygen as such. Okay, but having said this, there's also, because you see, because of this, there has also been a lot of concern about whether using of this industrial oxygen is responsible for diseases like black or white fungal infection. So, what is the take? Is it, I mean, that's not really connected with this, or what exactly is the issue there?
Susan, it's one of those very, very unfortunate things that have happened. Uh, to some extent, we take it as certain aspersions were cast on, let's say, our industry per se, I would say. It's absolutely wrong. And, I'm not a doctor. Uh, but during one of the discussions I had with a very famous doctor in India, a lot of people, he's almost a household name to the viewers of this. I had a chat with him, and then when I explained to him the whole thing, he said, Mr. Banerjee, let me admit, the way the pandemic has hit us, we in the medical fraternity are running around like headless chicken. We are grasping at straws to explain things that were not the norm earlier. We picked on this. I can assure you, technically, this whole thing is totally unfounded.
Okay, okay. So it's more a confusion than, or lack of understanding of what purity at which it is being produced. But this brings us to another question, Mr. Banerjee, is that uh, there has been a lot of talk going on about oxygen concentrators to be used and not to be used and provided, because I believe that this also gives some relief to people. But oxygen concentrator, I believe, is only moves or removes the nitrogen and to an extent, and uses the released oxygen to the pipeline. So, is it really very useful from that point of view from medical users? And if so, is Linde also talking about or thinking about manufacturing? Because most of these keeps on coming from abroad and comes from China. So, is there something being thought about by Linde in this regard?
So, to answer your first question, Mr. Sen, in the oxygen concentrators do definitely have an important role to play. As you would have noticed, the trend amongst the treatment, let's say, protocol followed for COVID was that you don't admit a person immediately upon the first onsets once the RT-PCR shows a positive or the first onsets. The hospitals just did not have space to admit everyone. So to a large extent, the doctors were relying on home quarantine and video consultations and all that. And that's where the oxygen concentrators do they have a role to play in case of patients who need sort of a nominal oxygen support. Having said that, there's one thing which we learned during this pandemic is that typically oxygen concentrators as available in the retail market are have capacities up to 5 liters per minute, which may not be adequate for COVID infected patients. So the advisory is that whatever concentrators are to be brought into India or to be manufactured should preferably be of 10 liters per minute. Now, to your second question, once upon a time, BOC India, Linde India was earlier BOC India, used to deal with oxygen concentrators. We didn't manufacture them. We used to deal with them, but this we stopped it several years back before I joined. So I would say about 15, 16 years back, we stopped it. We are not in that segment.
Okay. Taking into this, now that you have just mentioned that the Delhi news that just come in, what do you see going down the way, going forward? How are you How are the people protected by? Is there enough oxygen being produced? Enough infrastructure in place? How do you see that? You did
So,
mention this a little earlier, but I thought that this is becoming more and more issue
sure,
of.
sure. So, Shiva Sasan, definitely there are apprehensions about wave three. I'm repeat, I'm not a doctor. I'm not from the medical fraternity to forecast what and when it's going to happen. But yes, definitely, wave two has been a big learning experience for us in the gas industry. I would assume for the hospitals also, as well as for the state and central governments. So yes, steps are being taken at various levels to augment the supply chain for oxygen. We are in regular touch with the various states, with the central government. You would have noticed a lot of states have come out with special incentives, the sort of a viability gap funding, what they would like to do to a lot of states who don't have their own oxygen plants or have inadequate liquid oxygen manufacturing capabilities within their states. Are coming out with such schemes. Definitely, there would be investments happening on that front. Uh, the central government has come out with the scheme of PSA hospital in hospitals. Okay, there's a separate. I can have a discussion on that aspect again. We are trying to impress on the various authorities that it's essential to have storage facilities of oxygen. I mean, we have huge thousands and thousands of tons of storage at our plants, but it's better if that distribution, the storage facility is enhanced and reaches at a district level. So there are various steps being taken in. Now, how many of these steps would be in place by the time wave three hits us? If it hits us, we are all trying our level best.
Coming to this, you just mentioned that as a safety protocol. I mean, when we were when during COVID second wave, COVID-19 second wave, every day the media was reporting, televisions were reporting that okay, we have got half an hour's oxygen left, we have got 2 hours oxygen left. It was terrifying actually looking at that. And of course, it did come in time. Of course, that happened. But as a safety protocol, should the hospitals or the nursing homes have either their own oxygen generation plant or should have much bigger storage capacity installed there itself? Because as you have mentioned that there is oxygen available, but storage may be a problem.
Yep.
So which one is more safe?
It's like this. Having their own manufacturing plant, the quantum of oxygen needed for a hospital or a cluster of hospitals is not big enough to justify an investment in a cryogenic air separation plant.
Okay.
A cryogenic air separation plant, actually, the smallest of them would be producing much more than what a medium-sized city in India would normally need, more than that. So yes, there is an option of hospitals going in for these PSA oxygen generators. The central government has in wave one, they had sponsored a lot of them under PM CARES fund. Now a lot of things has been mandated. But just a word of caution, as we say, the PSAs are not a panacea. PSA is a particular machinery which produces oxygen of a particular grade. It cannot take care of any surge demands. It can supply what it's rated for, and of course, the selection of the PSA is important because we've come across numerous instances of PSAs which fail within 3 or 4 months, which start producing 70% of their rated capacity at oxygen concentrations of 70%, 80%, which is much lower than what the Indian Pharmacopoeia, as I said, says 90% minimum. So, and these PSA units also need a lot of maintenance. They do need a particular regime of, after all, it's an equipment. It has its own reliability issues. It's not that they're inherently unreliable, but they need a particular discipline around it. And as I said, they can't take surges. And There's another issue. There's that what happens if there's a power failure? What happens if there's a scheduled or an unscheduled outage? So we believe that liquid oxygen does give that flexibility to a hospital to take care of any demand. It could be a surge demand, it could be a zero demand. Liquid oxygen will take care of that. So PSS, I would say, do have a role. They, in case installed across the country, properly maintained, they will reduce the base demand of liquid oxygen to some extent, allowing more liquid oxygen to be used for, crisis areas, but they are not the end solution. The end solution should possibly be a mix of both. But what we have been trying to impress upon the governments and the hospitals is, please enhance liquid storage capacities. Again, there are some regulatory hurdles in the way. We have some very obsolete safety requirements which are not prevalent in most of the world, which actually limit the amount of liquid oxygen that can be stored in hospital premises. And certain hospitals cannot store liquid medical oxygen because of these old, obsolete requirements. So we are again in discussions with the authorities on getting them up to date.
So basically, it means that one of the, as you have just mentioned, that the making a new cryogenic plant is not a new generating plant, is really a very expensive proposition, and maybe it will feed a whole big city, or maybe big cities like Delhi probably will need 2 or 3 such plants, and that will take time. And you have also mentioned PSA is an alternative, I believe, but should be a standby alternative from that point of view, together with as a backup for this liquid oxygen. But preferred and safest route is to store liquid oxygen and the storage of liquid oxygen. Is that the message that the hospitals should
More or
be?
less, yeah, definitely. They can look at PSAs for sure, but please select a good PSA, maintain it properly, and do not depend on a PSA for everything. You cannot.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, some years back, we realized that some of our, let's say, prospective customers were rather far away from our liquid oxygen producing plants. So we don't manufacture our PSAs, but we do have an offering where we source PSAs as per our standards, and we install them at hospitals on 15-year, 10-year contracts, where we are responsible for installing the PSA, operating and maintaining it, providing oxygen from it, and also ensuring that there is a robust backup system to kick in whenever the PSA is sort of found wanting.
Yeah. But there's a question which keeps on coming to everybody's mind all the time, that you have mentioned that in eastern part of India we have a larger production or larger production of oxygen, generation of oxygen here, and but in certain parts of the northern India, or maybe in Western India, I don't know, but there is a disparity in terms of what is the oxygen producing capacity in different parts of the country, which really makes it a terrifying logistic problem to be seen. Uh, what would be your advice to the other state governments or other areas? Is that would they be considering installing newer plants in their respective areas to feed the network of the hospitals?
Yeah, Mr. Sen, as I mentioned, some of the state governments have definitely taken it upon themselves to provide that viability gap funding, as they say, or the PPP model. Because, I mean, setting up an oxygen plant, as I said, typically about maybe less than 20% of the, more like 15% of the overall liquid oxygen demand goes for medical purposes. So you can't set up a cryogenic oxygen plant for medical purposes alone, because no one, I mean, the pandemic is, hopefully, we've seen 2 waves. Hope, God willing, we won't see any further waves, but even if they come short term, 1 month, 2 months, so economically and financially, it just doesn't work out. Now, what happens is, if we put up oxygen plants where there's an overall demand for it, which is a mix of medical and industrial. Now, there are certain states where their industry, let's say, characteristics don't really call for too much of liquid oxygen from an industrial perspective. So that's where these states do have lesser oxygen capacity. Some of them don't have any oxygen manufacturing capacity. So that's the states who are coming out with these incentive plans. So we would be seeing some let's say, capacity enhancement on that account, for sure.
Okay, that looks to be something. But One thing is of concern because we have all been looking at all the information that we have is more about larger cities and towns, and we haven't really seen too much, or we don't have possibly too much of information of what's exactly happening in rural India. The oxygen demands would still be in rural India and the rural health centers. How is this being handled and how is this being met?
So I think it's a very, very relevant question you asked, and I personally, this is a question that's been plaguing me since some months now. I mean, when we saw that what happened in NCR and it's now sort of dipping, but it's obvious it's going to spread from the cities to the villages. And do the villages have the necessary infrastructure? I doubt it very much. So yes, one of the discussion points that we have been raising is at least on a district level. Of course, one need to keep in mind that you can't be administrating oxygen at a primary healthcare sort of center in a village. There are certain do's and don'ts around oxygen. Oxygen, at the end of the day, is it can be a very dangerous element to handle. We know that very well. At those purity levels, any fire or anything in its vicinity, oxygen will just ensure that the whole thing gets blown apart. Similarly, when you're talking about compressed oxygen, you're not talking about just the chemical properties of oxygen, you're also talking about 150 bar storage and all. So it's that not every, let's say, facility may be geared up to handle oxygen. So at individual village wise, perhaps that may not really work out, but definitely on a district wise or on a sub district wise, wherever there's some amount of infrastructure, decent health infrastructure, that's where we believe liquid medical oxygen storage is required. One more point, Mr. Sen, if you notice, what we have clearly seen during wave 2 that there is a timing gap of at least 2 to 3 weeks between the onset of the number of cases going up and the oxygen demand coming in. So that gives this 2 to 3 weeks a sufficient time to start a supply chain to those areas.
But there also has been what you just mentioned. Also, it's possibly will supplying the oxygen or storage of oxygen in cylinders and having the cylinder network, as we have seen in some of the smaller hospitals do. Oxygen cylinders being connected in a manifold to be distributed. Does that makes a little more sense in the rural areas and the rural supplies? Because
yes, but then again,
to have a big cryogenic system, maybe or big oxygen storage can be a problem.
Again, they said it will depend on how far that village is from the nearest cylinder filling station. So if you see purely from what happens? A cylinder is you're storing it in a gaseous form. So you're actually handling and transporting a huge amount of steel to get in a small amount of oxygen in it. So it depends. If it's close by to a town which has a cylinder filling station, which can do runs once a day or once in 2 days to get cylinders in, yes, definitely, surely.
Okay. But is there sufficient cylinders available? Because it seems that there was also a question which came about that not enough cylinders available. There was shortage. Is there a shortage which exists in the country about cylinders?
Again, during the wave 2 pan, definitely there were areas where the cylinder, if you see, I mean, we are one of the bigger gas companies in India, and we operate mainly in the cities and the bigger towns. We don't have reach into the smaller areas. And so there is a lot of hospitals over there which are served by cylinders, served through cylinders by relatively smaller players. A lot of these players depend on liquid oxygen from us. They buy liquid oxygen from us, take it to their plants, and then fill up their cylinders.
Okay.
So they would have had shortages in terms of filling capacity, shortages in terms of number of cylinders, and definitely, Mr. Sen, I mean, you would be knowing, I think everyone knows, unfortunately, incidences like that also lead to hoarding. A lot of cylinders went under hoarding. So if you see the backdrop behind me, that's a campaign we are actually going to start rolling out nationwide. We learned a lot of things during the pandemic, and we are going to implement a lot of things. But at the end, we will be successful only if everyone else also contributes in terms of preserving every drop of oxygen for saving lives.
Yes, I can see that it says save oxygen and to save life. Save oxygen, save life. Uh, Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what exactly you meant by save oxygen. I mean, uh,
Yeah, so
but this is truly a wonderful message that you're conveying to people.
yeah, I mean, it's just that you want to roll it out. Today, I suddenly realized that I have the backdrop ready. Might as well.
But
Thanks for giving me that
it's
opportunity.
a very, very important message that you're conveying. But when we talk about save oxygen means what exactly for us?
So it's basically about trying to prevent indiscriminate use of oxygen. Now, one is which we don't have the capability nor, let's say, the wherewithal to get into is what is happening at the hospital end. But I've had several discussions. I've been part of several task forces where even the medical fraternity is casting doubts on do they use the oxygen optimally or not. I'll keep that aside altogether. We are not qualified to comment on it. On the retail side also, I mean, everyone would have come across people hoarding oxygen for the remote event that if a near and dear one gets affected, needs it, what to do. But at the end of the day, I believe this whole thing is becoming totally counterproductive.
Yes.
I know a lot of complexes in Calcutta where people have just bought cylinders and kept them.
This
Now,
is
they
real
also need,
terrible.
yeah, even of course, now going to the next step, surely as I was mentioning, home quarantine and care is definitely a route. This the medical the doctor's advice, and in certain cases they do advise that okay, please use oxygen. But then the quantum of oxygen, please go as per your doctor's advice. You're not supposed to be giving a high flow oxygen to a patient whose pulse oximetry level with oxygen is in the range of 93, 94. You don't need to give them high. Reduce it. Try to make it zero. Don't play around with it. Please depend on, reach out to your doctor, reach out to your GP, take advice. When the patient, for example, is getting up to have a meal or is getting up for attending nature's calls, can we not ensure that the oxygen cylinder is turned off?
Okay. Yes.
So, I mean, we are going to actually roll out a campaign towards this and request the general population, please support us. And there are also, as I said, there are safety issues around it. Unplanned storage of oxygen cylinders. There are several safety concerns.
So in fact, truly, I mean, this is a wonderful message because actually, because also I think it's more because of ignorance and more because of panic conditions that they do it. And this kind of a campaign that you are taking forward is possibly is going to make a big difference and big in making people aware of what's happening because they are not really making it easy for everybody else and not even for them in time of crisis. And this, I think, is a great message. Should be spread across the country. Uh, it was really a wonderful. I don't know whether. Arnab, is there anybody else that anybody had any messages or any questions that you have received from anybody from yet?
There is a question.
Yes, please.
During the pandemic, there was a huge price difference for same oxygen cylinder for someone. Some people were quoting a fortune. So regarding the distribution price differences, I think they wanted to ask a question that why there was a large gap between a same oxygen cylinder during the time of a crisis. So how someone can manage that? That's I think he wants to know.
So, Arnab, first of all, it just goes back to what I was mentioning a couple of minutes back, hoarding. When there is hoarding, when there is shortage, then obviously there would be elements in the market who would try to use it for their maximum economic benefit. As far as, as I mentioned earlier, medical oxygen is a drug. The prices of that are regulated by the government. the oxygen that we sell, whether it be a liquid oxygen coming out from our cryogenic plants, or whether it be a cylinder, compressed oxygen coming out in cylinders from our plants, the prices are regulated by the government of India, which visits us pricing every year and makes corrections as per various cost factors, etc. So from our perspective, prices don't change. But then, unfortunately, of whatever, I mean, our business model is a B2B. We are not into a B2C model. Subsequently, what happens down the road in the market is, again, there are unethical people who would like to take advantage of a shortage, and it's most unfortunate. It's really, really unfortunate. Yes, I have also come across media reports. I have also been told by some friends and relatives that oxygen cylinder prices just shot through the roof.
Yes, it just would be the intermediary people who are taking advantage of the shortage and prices. That's possibly the issue.
But then, as I
And
said, we ourselves are contributing to it by creating that scarcity,
yes, yes,
partly.
yes.
I'm not saying there was no scarcity, but we've enhanced the scarcity.
True, true, true.
Sir, another one, another question that has come from the audience.
Is there a name
They,
or not? Is there a name who is raising the question?
Sir Partho Goswami.
Okay.
Sir, he's asking that. Just give me 1 second, sir. So he's a manufacturer. He said that the kind of strategies, innovative strategies, so that the Linde has taken is for changing their level of manufacturing from the ratio that they have changed is phenomenal in terms of being innovative in terms of when there was a crisis from the requirement of for the requirement of industry level oxygen and the requirement of medical level oxygen just went vice versa. So so this kind of innovativeness is really commendable. And how much does he think that manufacturers in Bengal are how much these manufacturers of West Bengals are equipped with this kind of innovations?
That's a tough one. Mr. Goswami, that's a very tough one for me to answer.
But I mean, most people actually, Mr. Management, most people thought that switching of between industrial and I really don't know. I mean, because you have explained, it's not really such an issue. I mean, switching from one oxygen to the other, because you would actually produce much more purer oxygen, actually.
Mr. Sen, if I may just sort of clarify,
Please.
before the pandemic, the medical oxygen that we were selling was produced in the same plant, was stored in the same 2,000 or 5,000 ton storage tank, was brought into the hospital by the same tanker.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So now that tanker was earlier making also trips to industries.
Yes.
Those trips to industries have been stopped, and more trips have been coming to the hospital. So now just tell me, where does the purity change?
Nothing. It does not. It does not. So basically, so we always had an impression that to switch from industrial oxygen to medical oxygen, some work has to be done in the oxygen generation plant. That's not required. That's
Just
exactly
to clarify,
also
there
the
was
important thing to be clarified. Actually, that's always people were worrying about that.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just the same thing.
yes. Arnav, any other question?
Another question from Mr. Shomiron Sen. How did
Sorry, we
diverse
might be taking more of your time, but I think this is a topic, Mr. Manager, that we have to address and answer this, if it's okay with you.
how did diversion of oxygen affect the industry? So that's what maybe the steel industry
Sorry,
was suffering.
diversion of oxygen has affected the industry.
Affect the industry, yeah,
From the
because there
industry.
was a cap on using the industrial oxygen. So some steel manufacturers were suffering, and so overall, how did you address that?
Unfortunately, it's not just some steel manufacturers. There were several of our customers who I'm very sorry to say, and this is something which I mean I've never been comfortable with, whose operations we had to actually shut down because we were not supplying oxygen to them.
Yes,
I mean, this is a very, very tough call. Uh, of course, I mean, we can always take, let's say that it was a government of India mandate. We were not allowed to do it, definitely. I'm sure it has caused a lot of grief, a lot of pain to our customers across the country. But unfortunately, that's the way it is. But I'm happy to say that the government also was very fast in realizing when the medical oxygen demand, started coming down. The allowing us to restart industrial also was done. I was amazed at the speed at which we were allowed to restart industrial oxygen, and now with the medical oxygen demands having come down substantially, we're almost there at what we were earlier in terms of industrial sales. We're almost back again. Next month, we'll be totally at normal.
Mr. Banerjee, it was truly wonderful and it was absolutely revealing. And many of the questions which has normally comes to our mind, common people are not known. I mean, people like us possibly to know what exactly is going on about oxygen and what were the issues. There was a lot of media hype. But today, listening to you, a lot of questions have been clarified, a lot of questions have been answered. We truly appreciate. And once more, I'd like to personally thank you on behalf of the Bengal Chamber to spend your time to give your time for this meeting. I know you are an extremely busy person, but we truly appreciate your being present and clarifying a lot of questions, a lot of doubts, and taking a lot of other questions. We truly appreciate, and we also will try to spread the message that you're standing on your logo, save oxygen and save life. This, in fact, will request Bengal Chamber also to mention this to whichever meeting that they hold, that this is the message of today. And this is the message that India conveys. Thank you so much. And we truly appreciate your being present with us today. Thank
Thank
you.
you. It was
Thank
an honor
you.
for me to be at Bengal Chamber of Commerce. On a lighter tone, Mr. Sen, it was an easier way out. I couldn't have put up with Arnab's, the way he came at me. So it was much easier for me to accept than to push back at him.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. We are.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot, Mr. Sen.
Thank you, sir.
Really.
Thank you.
Thanks.
With this, we will conclude this rapid fire chat session with Mr. Abhijit Banerjee, Managing Director, Linde India Limited. When we are really thankful to Mr. Indrajit Chen, Managing Director of International Combustion India Limited, and our past president of the chamber. And with this, we will conclude this. We thank all the sponsors for the event, and we will be coming back exactly at 3 o'clock with the session, which will cover enabling innovation and entrepreneurship, the voice of young Bengal. Till then, stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Banerjee.